Assalamu alaikum. Today you will learn how to use get and post method in servlets. Before moving on to any of the further topics, let me inform you that this is the fifth tutorial in the series of JSP and servlets in Java. So if you have not gone through the previous tutorials, I highly recommend you to go through the previous tutorials first and then come back to this tutorial. So without any further ado, let's get started. So in the last tutorial, if you remember, we have created this form which takes two input from the user, and when we click on the submit button, it gives us the addition of those two numbers, right? We have created the HTML page for that, and we have also created our servlet for this logic. So the client makes a request when the user clicks on the submit button. The control goes to the servlet and servlet performs action based upon the logic written in this. Now a client can make multiple kinds of requests such as get, post and other types of request. But in this tutorial, we will be focusing on get and post request. So first we'll see how does a get request looks like. So in order to make a get request, I'll say method type is equals to get and save the project, right click, run as, run on server. Now let me enter some values. I'll say 2 and 5, click on submit. It gives us the output 7, which is the addition of those two numbers. Now if you notice carefully the URL of this, you will be able to see that the number that we have input in the previous page, that is 2 and 5, is clearly visible in the URL, which is num1 is equals to 2 and num2 is equals to 5. This is because we are using get request, right? Now what happens if we use post request? I'll say post over here. So I'll right click over here, run as, run on server. Now if I enter some numbers over here, let's say 2 and same numbers 2 and 5, click on submit. We got the output, but if you notice the URL, we are not able to see the numbers that we entered before. That is, the parameters are not visible into the URL if we are using post request. Whereas in get request, we were able to see these parameters, but in post request, we are not able to see the parameters. Now you may ask, what is the difference then, whether if you are able to see the parameters or not? Well, the post kind of requests are used especially where the data is crucial, such as instead of these two inputs, if the user is going to enter his password, so we do not want that the password should be visible in the URL, okay, because password is a sensitive type of data, right? So to hide these kinds of data, we use post request. So in this kind of request, we are not able to see the password or the personal data of the user. Now, what if on the server side, we only want to accept get request or we only want to accept post request? If you take a look at our Java code, you must have noticed that we have not changed anything in our Java code, but still we are able to make different types of request. This is because the service method over here supports a general type of request. It can support get request as well as it can support post request. Now what if we only want to accept get request or we only want to accept post request from the client? Then what we have to do? Then we have to make use of several methods. For example, if we want only get request, then I'll copy this method and rename it to doGet. That's it. So instead of service method, now we are using doGet. This doGet method accepts only get request. If the client by chance is asking for a post request, this code will not work. It will only accept get request. So let me demonstrate that. I go to home and I'll run this application again. This should work fine because we are using get request. So 2 and this time let's say 6, submit. So it is working fine and we are able to see the parameters. Why? Because we are using get request, right? Now what if instead of get request, we use post request over here, and on the Java side, we are only accepting get request. So I'll run this code again. I'll say 7 and 2, click on submit. As you can see over here, we got an error. Let's see what is the error over here. It says the method received in the request line, which is the URL, is known by our origin server but not supported at the target resource. That means it is not supported in our Java code. In other words, the HTTP method post is not supported by the URL. So we are making a post request, but this post request is not supported by the Java code. We only support get request. Now similarly, we can also make a scenario for post request. So what is the method for post request? As you may already have guessed it, it is do post. That's it. And let me just comment this part. And here let it be post. I'll right click, run this, run on server. Let's see, 2 and something 3, submit. It is working fine. And we are also not getting any data in the URL because we are using post request. And why is it working fine? Because the client is making a post request, and on the server side, in the servlet, we are also accepting only post request. Now what if a client makes get request over here? As you may already have guessed it, it will not work. But let me also demonstrate that for you. So I'll stop the server over here and right click, run as, run on the server. So if we input some numbers, let's say 2 and 3, click on submit, it will not work. We are getting a similar error over here, which is HTTP method get is not supported by this URL, which means the method get that we are making get request is not supported by the servlet. The servlet only supports post request, right? So this is how the get and post works. Now there is more than this to it. There are different scenarios and different conditions when to use get and when to use post, and apart from get and post, what are the other available methods? I'll explain you all that when we will be starting with the database and JDBC stuff. But for now, for basic beginners, just keep in mind, if we are using get request, we are able to see the parameters in the URL, and if we are using post request, we are not able to see the parameters in the URL. And I will explain you all the other things related to these kinds of methods later when we will be learning about the database in Java. So I hope you got a basic understanding of how and when to use get and post methods in a servlet. If you want a detailed video on this, just let me know in the comment section. I'll create a more detailed version of this video for you. So I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.